Welcome to the Building Wealth with No Borders podcast with me, Lamide Elizabeth, where I'll be bringing you guests from around the world to share their strategies on building wealth. Today, we are in Dubai with Nigerian-American entrepreneur and property investor, Chidi Ashley. Yay!
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Chidi. So I'm going to read a little bit about your bio and then we're going to get a bit more into your story. So you was born in Canada?
Yeah, born in Canada.
Born in Canada, you grew up a little bit in Nigeria, South Africa, and England before moving to New York to study business, economics, and marketing at NYU Stern Business School.
Yeah.
You're a multi-8-figure entrepreneur running 2 businesses, Luxe Tribes, which is a globally based travel service, and Community, which promises to provide authentic, stress-free bucket list experiences to travelers, as well as Readyhubb, which is a software solution and marketplace designed for independent beauty professionals, freelancers, and small businesses, which is absolutely amazing. Where I really wanted to start is your childhood. What was your childhood like growing up in relation to like money and travel?
Yeah, of course. So I grew up with parents that were entrepreneurs, are entrepreneurs. And so it just in relation to money specifically, to start, when you grow up in a household where both parents are business owners, you feel the ebbs and flows of money. And, you understand very quickly that money comes and goes. My mom was a real estate agent. My dad is a computer engineer and he started his own businesses. And so things can be up and things can do really well one month and then things can be down, right? And so I learned very quickly, like, that's how the business world is, right? It's about taking risks. It's about putting yourself out there, and it can massively pay off. And then it can also have times when things are really down, right? And times when you can be financially constrained. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed kind of seeing my parents' journey building businesses, and my parents really kind of involved me at a young age into what was going on in their business. And they weren't shy. They weren't shy to be like, hey, like, this is what's going on. This is what we're struggling with. And not in a way that it made it my burden, but more so in an educational way to share their journey. And so it's been exciting to see how they've built their businesses and some of the lessons that they've learned. But on the financial side, it's taught me about taking risks, right? And being comfortable. It really got me comfortable with the idea that if you take big bets, you could have huge payoffs. And it's also taught me that the people that win in life, and when I say win, I'm like financially, the people who have been able to achieve wild financial success are the ones who are comfortable with the idea of taking those big bets. And so that's something I became comfortable with at a young age. And then in terms of travel, again, like having parents who were building their businesses. I lived in South Africa for 7 years. I lived in Nigeria, lived in England and different countries. And so that another thing is just how to be adaptable, like how to pick up in any environment, make friends, put yourself out there. And so that was something that was super exciting as well for me as a kid. I didn't realize it then in the moment that, I was gaining all these skills. And then down the line, I'm realizing like how much I'm comfortable just being in new environments.
That's so interesting. So I have like another friend of mine, and more specifically, her dad was an entrepreneur. Her mom had a traditional job, and she is probably one of the most like anti-entrepreneurship people that I've seen, particularly because she felt the ebbs and flows when she was growing up. And like a lot of the time, because her dad was the one who was taking the risk, when the risk wouldn't pay off, her mom would have to be the one to kind of step up to the plate and take over with things, right? And that made her very anti-entrepreneurship because she saw that instability. Right. So I'm really interested. So when you say you like experienced the ebbs and flows, like how did it, like in the moment, like was it like ever serious enough where it's like, oh my God, you might have to change schools or something like that? Or was it maybe like you wanted something and your dad was like, or your mom was like, okay, maybe not this month. So it wasn't that deep.
Yeah, I mean, starting from when I was younger, when my parents were still building their businesses, we would have times, especially like living in, so this was around when we lived in Nigeria, we would have times where we would sleep like in our car for air conditioning, right? And just like to have like some sort of comfort at night, right? And then I saw my parents build and push and grow, right? And both of them being entrepreneurs meant that there was less stability in terms of finances. But I think that's a testament as well to their marriage, right? Is that my parents I'm so grateful, and I didn't realize how much, the parents that you have can really impact your future relationships, but they taught me what it means to work as a team, right? So one person might be off, the other person is picking up. So it could have, and I can see, you can see even with siblings, you can all grow up in the same household, and that has different types of impacts on the different children. But for me specifically, I really like the fact that, one, I saw them build something I saw them take something from nothing, right? And build that up, right? And that is exciting to have something that you can be proud of and that you can call your own, right? And seeing how they were able to kind of take all the knocks and move on. And so I remember growing up, I always said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to be a billionaire. I'm going to do all these great things, because I was just so proud of the example that I saw in my parents. So it can have different effects on people. And it can also have an effect on your relationship, right? Like you have to, if you're in a relationship with someone or planning to be in a relationship with someone, you have to decide whether or not you want to take that challenge on of being in a relationship with someone who is more entrepreneurial, because it does come with a lot of ups and downs, right? And so with my parents, I've seen that, and I've seen how they've balanced each other out. And I thought that was really something cool to just be a part of.
That's amazing. So at what age was you like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur? And then when was your first business?
Yeah, I can't even remember, but I've known this, I felt that in my bones, I think, since I was 10. My first business, I remember, was in South Africa. We had this big business day at school, and we all had to form groups, and someone had to be the CEO of the group. And I was the CEO of my group, getting the girls together, getting ready to sell. We had a business day where you have to sell things. Moving on from that, I used to sell in school, just sell. So I used to create notes for people. Notes? I would write prepare for exam.
Cool.
Yes. So I would pay attention in class, prepare my school notes, and sell them to people who during exam season to help them prepare. And then there was one exam that everyone failed, and that business quickly tanked because I was responsible for that. So girl, they were coming for me with pitchforks. So that business quickly tanked. But, I've always had that spirit in me of I want to do something, and not necessarily knowing where that was going to take me. And also because of my parents and the path that they were on, my dad always used to say, I don't want you to be a doctor. I want you to own the hospital. Ooh, right. And so from a young age, I started to see that, I don't want to sell my time. Right. I want to create. And I really like the idea of creating something and being able to scale that thing. And so that's kind of how I've been set on this path. It's just having parents who are intentional about how they raise you up, and having parents who gas you up as well. My parents have been parents who will gas me up in terms of you can do anything, right? Whatever it is you're trying to do, you can make it. And not in the way that you're filling up your head with rubbish, but more so giving you that confidence. So the world, when you go out into the world, you know that you can take on any challenge.
I love how confident and how you speak about the impact that your parents have had, because I feel like a lot of people who are successful, because they want to have this image that they did it all on their own and it's rags to riches, they will very quickly not mention the leg up that they have had, so that they can, so that their story sounds a bit more oh my God, this person did it all on their own. And I think also another part of it is that sometimes external people can try and reduce other people's success by saying, oh, but their parents are also successful. So well, then obviously, but then there are a lot of very successful, let's say, marriages and couples who don't produce children who are also successful, right? So there's still a level of agency that you have to have as an individual, regardless of, your parents could be horrible and you can turn out to be amazing. Your parents could be amazing and you can turn out to be amazing. But I love the fact that you really own that your parents have played a huge factor into who you are and your entrepreneurship journey. That's really commendable.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, people don't understand enough. When you talk about wanting to build generational wealth, people forget the aspect of, who you are and the role that you're playing into your children's life, right? Good parenting, right? And not passing down trauma is a form of generational wealth, right? So people think that generational wealth is just a financial thing. Like, I just want to pass down a ton of money to my kids, not knowing that you're also passing down trauma. You're also passing down a ton of emotional distress. And so for me, I've never had to take, I've never had to ask my parents for money to be in my business journey. I've never had to ask for loans. I've not had a financial leg up, but I've certainly had a leg up in terms of having people I can confide in, having people I can go to for advice, right? And also just having the richness of, a background where, over the past few years, I've been really pushed into a space mentally where I'm ready for any challenge. And again, like I said, I've seen my parents in their own capacity building their own businesses. And so when something happens and it's not necessarily what I planned, or when things don't go according, I'm not scared of that challenge. And so, yes, there's a generational wealth that I have received from my parents in terms of them being actual hands-on, right, parents, and not passing down all the stress and the traumas. So I'm not shy about that. I'm actually very grateful. And that's something now that I have my own child, it's something I care about a lot more, because you don't realize just how much of a leg up you have when you have a childhood where you can focus on being a child. Right. And so a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people are thrust into adulthood too early. Ooh. Right. And so they're not able to really be their full selves. And I'm thankful that I haven't had that problem.
That is such a good point. And I would say, as someone who probably on the other side of that had felt like I had to grow up quite quickly in terms of like having a single mom and stuff, it's so true. And I think when you do grow up with a bit more, not always having to be the child, you will crave stability a lot more. Like a corporate job, and I'm not saying that, it's bad to have a corporate job, but a corporate job is fantastic when you've had to grow up in a place, let's say when your parents haven't had like a high flying job, or they're not high earners, and you feel that like just earning 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 a year for a lot of people I know from where they have come from, it's like, whew, this is enough. This is better than where I came from. So let me just stay here. So I think that is such a good point. But I also wanted to talk about like your travel company. Was that your first like successful company?
Yeah. I mean, after the whole Node situation, definitely wasn't running into building a business after that. But Luxe Tribes was my first official company. I started that after I had graduated. So I graduated from NYU, worked at a tech company in New York, and I was working as a business analyst. And one of the things that was very important to me before even moving into that job is I told him at the interview, I said, I want to learn what it takes to build a successful business. And so that was something that was exciting to me, to specifically be in a role where I got to see all the facets of building and scaling a company. So they had, when I joined to the point where I left, they had added over 70 new employees during that time. I got to sit with, the heads of finance. I got to sit next to the CEO. I got to sit with, the tech team and the marketing team. And for me, that was so exciting to just kind of see how things move.
Did you seek that out, by the way? Or was this like just a part of the role, seeing all of this stuff?
No, you have to seek it out, right? Like you can be, especially when you enter a new company, you can very quickly be boxed in, right, to a certain role. And I think it's so important to just really start to see how you can leverage and build relationships and understand how systems move in any company that you're in. And so that was something I wanted to do. And also before I got the job, I had offers from other companies. And I really started to look and see like, what would I be doing in my day to day, right? I don't want to just be, a small person in this huge system. I really want to be somewhere where I can learn how to make an impact. And so it was really nice when I got that job offer. And I remember when I interviewed for that job and just how exciting that I felt about the team and that energy. Because when you're stuck in a bad job, it is so like, that is your day to day. And so that was something I really wanted to be intentional about, was finding the right company that matched up with my long-term goals.
So how did that work? When did Luxe Tribes start? And was it whilst you were working? How did you balance the two?
Yeah. So how Luxe Tribes started, I had been posting travel content for the longest time while I was in university. You guys say university or you say college?
Uni.
Okay. Cause I say college, but I didn't know. So I had been posting a bunch of travel content while I was in university. Actually, while I was in university, I would do a bunch of like odd jobs. So I would do things like building websites for people, managing social medias. And I used to be on Upwork. So I would do a lot of jobs on Upwork to earn money. And then I would use that money to travel and I would post content. So around that time when I started working in my job after I graduated, I posted, I wanted to travel to Bali, didn't have anyone who could travel with me. All of my friends had started working. And then the friends who weren't necessarily working didn't have the finances to travel. And so I just posted on social media and I was like, hey guys, I'm traveling to Bali. Here's my plan for what I'm going to do. Let me know if you're interested. And I had over 200 people sign up and express interest in a few hours. And so that was really the genesis of Luxe Tribes. It was out of my own need and wanting to travel, but also having built a community of women who were following me for my travel content. And so it was a natural kind of next step. I wasn't looking to start a business at the time, but, eased into that. And so for the first few months, I was still working in my company. I remember shortly after I started Luxe Tribes in December. I came back to work in the office in January and I told my manager at the time, I was like, hey, listen, I started this company and I want to move to Bali and I want to work remotely from Bali. And I remember I just started crying. Because I was so overwhelmed. I had built up this conversation in my head, thought about all the different ways it could go. And I also went into that conversation knowing that it could end potentially with me leaving the company, right? But she was like, okay, no problem. And I was like, wow, it's that easy. And, so I packed up my New York apartment 2 weeks later, moved to Bali to start working on this business while also still working at the tech company that I was working at. So I worked side by side. So building my business and working at the tech company for about a year. And then I remember closing out that year and looking at our financials. And I was like, wait a second, I am hiring people for the same salary that I'm getting paid in this job.
Imagine.
So I was like, okay, maybe it's time to like step aside from this job and really go all in. And yeah, that's how things began with Luxe Tribes.
What was the first trip like?
So that was interesting because I moved to Bali shortly after, hosted my first trip. And on the first day, 3 of the girls left. They were not having it. They were like, I don't like this villa. I'm leaving. And so, of course, like starting a new company and your very first trip, like you're met with such negativity was a blow, right? But then I was like, you know what? Let me show up for the people who are showing up for me. There was 14 women on that trip. And I showed up for them and we had the most incredible time. And I really started leaning into that spirit of exploring and adventure while also hosting and while also learning how to kind of manage the different aspects of a business, from marketing to finance to customer support. So it was a lot. That first year was definitely grueling because I was hosting the trips, I was traveling, and then I was also doing all of the back end work. And then I was also working as well. So mornings I would be hosting and managing my business. Evenings I would be working with my company because I was there in New York and I was 12 hours ahead. So my schedule was definitely tight that year, but it definitely paid off.
What was your headspace like mentally, like managing the side hustle, doing the job? Did the corporate job, did the work quality start to slip? Or were you just like, I don't know, zeroing out on sleep, maybe 2, 3, 4 hours? Like, what was it? What did it actually feel like going through that?
It was a lot. And the time management of trying to balance it all, it was difficult. And so I started trying to find people who could help me in my business to kind of, help with the admin side of things. But again, you're starting a new company, you have to be all in, you have to be hands-on. And I just that was a moment. I don't know if I could do that same, have that same push, but damn, lost out on sleep definitely put my hours in over that time and really just kind of was laser focused on the life that I wanted to build. And I also feel like I didn't want to let go of the job because I wanted to know that I had something to fall back on, you know, so I needed to know that I had validated this idea of this travel company that I wanted to start before going all in. And so I think I stayed longer than I probably should have because of wanting that safety net.
Can I ask how much the first trip was? So if I signed up to that trip, how much would it have been for me?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't planning on making money. I don't even think I really made any money on that first trip. It was like $800. Again, it was me putting out a trip to feel it out. And I just asked people like, hey, do you want to travel with me? And then I formalized it because so many people were interested. Right. And so the first few trips were not about really making money. They were more so about validating whether or not this was an idea or a business. And I remember also telling my parents about, you know, this. I mean, obviously as parents, like your child finishes school, they start a great job and then they're telling you they want to quit their job to go travel the world with strangers. Of course, you're going to be like, are you crazy? You know? And it's so funny because as parents, you can be as entrepreneurial and risk takers. And then when it comes to your kid, you almost like forget that, you know, that's what it takes. That you did the same thing, you know? But yeah, I mean, yeah, the first few trips are not about making money.
The reason I ask is because when it comes to a Black person trying to establish, because your business is called Luxe Tribes. So I'm guessing like the price of the trips aren't cheap. I feel like when Black people start businesses, at least let me speak from my experience. And obviously I'm coming from a very working class background. When a Black person starts a business and charges above anything that is like at a premium price, there's almost like an uproar of like, how dare you? Like what? Like this should be even, and it's not even just always Black people. Like even Molly May recently, I don't know if you saw, she started her brand. And I mean, I don't understand clothing. I don't understand like I've heard stuff about the material is polyester, but like even at the price range that she was charging, people are like in an uproar about things. And I know that yours is like luxury travel. So did you receive any pushback in terms of like the prices when you eventually maybe got to like a steady state of like, okay, the first few times I was testing, this is the price where I actually feel like this should be at? Was there any pushback in terms of like, did you feel first of all, like, oh, should I be charging this much? Are people going to pay this much? And was there any outside opinions on like, should you be charging, like, why are you charging that much?
Oh yeah. So when I started Luxe Tribes, I didn't plan, like I said, I didn't plan on it being the company that it is today. On the pricing side of things, I think it comes down to branding and the value. And one thing we did quickly is make it very clear what is the value that we are providing. One, that's the connection. Two, that is the experience, right? And you cannot build a business that's for everyone. We made it very clear from the beginning, we are not a budget travel company. If you are looking for a budget travel experience, we're not going to be the right fit. And I think that sometimes people don't respect that maybe Black business owners can be in the luxury category, right? And so, you know, it's almost like you have to prove yourself to be seen as a worthy brand, worthy of that luxury price tag. But we've always been in our lane and it's been great because the people who want that service will come to you. Again, I based my business on it to start. I named my business Chidi Ashley Travels. Right. And so my business was very closely tied to me as a person. And as we started to grow, I started to see that could cause friction, right? And I realized that I don't want to build a company that is so dependent on me that if I'm not there, we're not going to make money. And that's why we changed our business to the name to Luxe Tribes. And that's given us the capacity to kind of grow into different spaces as a company and really tap into different audiences. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about starting a business, really think about whether or not you want to make your personal brand so heavily intertwined with the company that you're building.
Do you think you can charge more if your personal brand is disconnected, or do you think you can charge more if your personal brand is connected?
Yeah, it goes hand in hand, right? Your personal brand will propel your company forward. And so when I see entrepreneurs not wanting to build that personal brand, I think that they're, especially in this day and age where companies are fighting for attention, you are doing yourself a disservice by not creating your personal brand. And on the other hand, you're doing yourself a disservice if your personal brand is your business, is the business, right? So if you build a business that is so dependent on your personal brand, you'll see as you get to scale that it affects your company. It can start to affect your customers and how they view your business, because they're always going to view it as a small business, right? And it's interesting actually, because when I was having conversations about changing my business name, and I was talking to people, they were like, but Tommy Hilfiger, right? But the Hilton Group and all these different Joe Malone, there's so many different companies and there's big businesses that have been built off of people's names. But, in this day and age, and especially because people want to know more of who you are, it can blur the lines a little bit and not necessarily lead to a payoff. So I still believe in the power of a personal brand and using your personal brand to speak for your business. Because if you don't have that personal brand that's speaking for your business, you will have to pay other people to speak for you, right? You will have to, play that game of hiring influencers or investing in marketing. So if you can do the job of marketing your business and help you, especially in the early days, to bring in that initial revenue, do that, right? But also think about making sure that your brand is standing alone, right? And your brand has that power in itself, right? So your brand is not just, that business brand is not just reliant on you.
I hope you guys are enjoying this content. If you are, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. If you're committed to building wealth with no borders and want to invest in a property in the UK or in Dubai, feel free to send an email to lamideelizabeth@gmail.com and I'll be sure to help you. If you're not quite ready to invest yet, check out the affordable video courses down below that will teach you more about property investing and money management. And if you're thinking of relocating to Dubai, setting up your business, breaking into certain industries, getting a visa, check out the Professional Network. The link will be below. You have so much wisdom to share. And for the people who are watching, Chidi is in her late 20s. Like you would think she's in her late 20s. But that was so good. One thing I wanted to ask is, I don't know, from my perception, I feel like the barriers to entry to start in a travel company doesn't seem that high, right? It's just kind of like you plan an itinerary, you get people to come, and then, that's how I'm seeing people start travel companies. What do you think it was that separated your business and took you to 7 figures, 8 figures? What was it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a discipline. The barriers to entry are very low, right? Anyone can host a group trip. For me, that was not what we were focused on. We were focused on building systems that would help us scale. Our goal is to become, the destination for experiences, travel experiences. And so we're not just about the group trip. We're about designing the experience that you're going to have, right? We're about creating moments that you're going to remember forever. And so very quickly, I started to build systems in my business that would allow us to scale quickly, right? And then also just really focusing on the customer side of things and being a customer-centered business. So things like, and this is something I learned in the startup that I worked for, in the tech company I worked for in New York, was listening to customers and being data-driven. I don't think we think about that enough as we're building companies. It's like, what does the data say? What are users or what are your customers doing? What are the things that they're clicking on? What are the words that are attracting them to your company? Are you delivering on the experience that you've promised? And so for me, that's how we grew quickly. Is we built a company that was 100% centered around the travelers and really listening to their pain points. And then we took it a step further as well, is designing systems that helped us scale quickly in terms of bringing on new team members as well. Designing systems that helped us grow in terms of the countries that we were able to service, right? And so that's been really some of the key things that have helped us scale and grow in terms of our revenue.
So were you, for example, doing like the front end marketing, I'm talking about the early stages, right? So you had your page where you was already posting travels before it turned into a business. Were you the one who was gathering all the customers and then maybe you were paying people to do the back end, or like on a tangibility, like practicality, what does that actually look like?
Yeah. So I was doing the back end. I built the website. I love building websites. So I built the website. I was the
Everyone.
finance manager, the customer support, the marketing. I would, market through my page, but I would also start, looking at like paid ads, strategic partnerships and things like that. But really Luxe Tribes has grown. I would say that 90% of, especially in the initial years, 90% of our revenue and our customers came from word of mouth and social media sharing and social media organically, right? So actually, like I said, we've done just over 23 million in revenue, but we have not had to spend a cent on the traditional marketing. We've tested out some things. So I tested out paid ads. And we've had years when we would try and see like, is this for us? Like doing the paid ads through Facebook, quickly realized that the return was just not there. Right. So I would say in the past 4 or 5 years of working on Luxe Tribes, we've probably spent less than $10,000 on marketing. Wow. Right. And all of the revenue and the travelers that we've acquired have been through social media, organic posting, and building a community, right? And so that has been the biggest lever for us, is how well we listen to our community and how we were able to build that community, even despite the pandemic as well. The pandemic was a massive blow, to the company. We processed hundreds of thousands of dollars in refunds. And I really thought like, hey, is this it for me? And that was a time when I started working on my company, Readyhubb. So Readyhubb is a tech startup. And we are building a marketplace for beauty professionals and their clients. So it's a mobile application and online application as well. So that was where Readyhubb came in. I had a ton of free time during the pandemic to start working on other business ideas. But luckily, Luxe Tribes also bounced back. And so, yeah.
Wow. So one of the first videos I came across from you, my friend Rebecca Tembo actually sent it to me, and it was you building a villa in Bali. And the name of this podcast is kind of like Building Wealth with No Borders. Yeah. What made you want to build a villa from the ground up in Bali?
Yeah, I honestly, when I look back, Bali was it for me. Like Bali was the plan. And, I love the idea of building wealth with borders, because different countries are it for you depending on the stage that you're in life, right? And I love the idea of having freedom to be in spaces depending on where you are. And so Bali was where I needed to be in my early 20s, right? So graduated, started working, quit that job, moved to Bali, and I spent the year hosting trips, building my business, traveling around the world. At the end of that year, we had done a significant amount in revenue. And I had, closed out on my trips. I wanted to build a life in Bali. And the idea of just settling down in Bali, I just saw myself like settling down, having a family, living my best life. And so that's where the idea of building the villa came in. I built it as a residential property that I was planning to, spend the rest of my days living that life. And I also really just started to do the calculations just in terms of, am I getting the most value for my money if I'm renting? If I do want to live in Bali long term, and I realized that I wasn't. And so I took, that money that I had earned through hosting and through building my business and used some of that to build the Villa Lori.
I love it. It's so beautiful. And maybe we can put some like pictures on the screen. And I love it. And then you eventually decided to move to Dubai. And I don't know what I was reading. Maybe it was your YouTube comments at the time. And people in the comments were like, what? You just built this whole thing in Bali. Why would you then decide to move to Dubai or whatever? And I love what you were saying beforehand, which is like a certain place can serve you for a certain season. And like knowing when okay, this season is up, it's time for me to move on is such a skill. So what made you want to then move to Dubai?
people are attached to things. I'm not. Like I've moved, I lived in Nigeria, England, New York, like all these different places. I moved around a lot as a child as well. So I don't get attached to things in the same way that other people might. And so, I built the house and I moved, right? Because Bali was no longer, what I saw for myself. And I'll give you a couple of reasons. So built the house, had the most amazing time. And then I quickly started to feel like I was in retirement. Like, you're living your dream life, and what is the, how do I say this? There was no like push to do better.
You know what's so crazy? This has been me this year. I felt like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I was like, I love this so much, but not for right now. Like, I'm glad I experienced it a little bit, but I need to leave. Like when I went to South Africa, I was like, I love this, but like, damn, I think I'm happy I experienced it, but I need to leave. Exactly. But then I would definitely love to come back into that space. But yeah, carry on.
No, exactly. So for me, I was, again, early 20s, right? I had the house. But I want to build businesses that change the world, right? And I want to build, like, I know what my trajectory is, and my trajectory is not to be complacent in this space. So Bali's an amazing place. It was an amazing place for that time, but it was not an amazing place for the next chapter. So I really had to sit and assess, what is it that I need in my next chapter? Like I said, I was building my company Readyhubb, right? Readyhubb is a tech startup. It has capital requirements, right? And so one is I needed to be able to hire amazing talent, right, in the tech space. I needed to be able to be closer to our customers, right? And to really have a better connection, a stronger connection with our users. I needed to be able to raise funding for our business. And so I started to look and say, well, my life in Bali is not matching up to the next step in my life, right? And on top of that, I'm building this business. I need to be somewhere that is tax friendly as well, right? And so moving to Dubai was purely business motivated. And I looked and I decided to move to a place that would help me build in the next phase of my business and not get complacent. I am not someone who cares about being comfortable. I care about, am I building something that I'm proud of? Am I building something that gets me up at night and makes me feel like, things are moving? And so that's why I moved to Dubai. It was really just to really laser focus on building my company, Readyhubb.
I love that. And then you just rent out the property, flex. And I think flexibility is so important as well, especially, that's what I believe, especially in your like early 20s, flexibility is so important. So can you talk more about that transition from Bali to Dubai? Like what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, so I had been to Dubai a few times before deciding to move. I'd been around 7 times, but I never experienced Dubai in the capacity, in the mindset of actually living in Dubai. And so when I eventually transitioned and decided, okay, I'm going to move, again, the biggest factors for me in terms of moving to Dubai was building my business and scaling my business and having, being in an environment that allowed me to do that.
What do you mean by that? What is it about the environment in Dubai?
So again, Dubai is tax-free, right? Income tax-free. And so the amount of savings that you get, especially when you're building a business like Readyhubb, a tech company, you require a significant amount of capital to get started, right? So whereas with Luxe Tribes, I didn't really need that initial capital investment to get started. I could just post trips and get people to sign up. Readyhubb has needed several hundreds of thousands of dollars to get started, right? And so I needed to put myself in a space where I could save, right? So I can invest in my own business, right? And then also I could meet talent, right? And I could have access to some of the best tech talent. And so that's why Dubai made sense. And then, saving on taxes is huge, right? If you're a US citizen, you're not able to completely save on taxes because US citizens still have to pay income tax. But I'm a Canadian citizen, so I'm able to kind of save all the money that I'm making and then reinvest that. But some of the things that I experienced just moving to Dubai is the shock of the difference in formality, right? So living in Bali, I did not own one designer bag. I did not own jeans. I did not own I didn't even have a wallet. I used to put my money in like this small purse that I bought on the side of the road. Like all my clothes were like less than $20. So coming to Dubai and, you know, like the girlies here, they know how to dress.
They do.
Okay. Everyone has a nice car. So there's definitely that, feeling like, you know, I need to kind of level up a little bit, at least when it comes to my closet, at least when it comes to just dressing a little bit more formal. And so that was like a big shift for me in terms of just adjusting how I present to the new space that I'm in. And also Dubai, you know, when you look at Dubai from like a tourist perspective, right? Like you're visiting, it's very, you know, like it's fun. There's entertainment, you know, nightlife and all of that. I'd never experienced Dubai from a residential perspective. And, you know, I really like the residential side of Dubai. And I don't think that that gets talked about enough.
Yeah.
Dubai is incredible for families. Like if you are someone who is, let's say, living in the UK, the cost to afford help, right? If you have kids, you have to think about that, right? Versus in Dubai, the cost to have, you know, full-time help as a mother, that is one of the key things. So a lot of my friends are able to have full-time nannies, which they would never be able to afford in, you know, in the UK or in the US, right? And so that's a factor. It's like, what kind of life, what's the quality of life that I want to have? And I quickly started learning more about family life in Dubai. Incredible communities as well, like where you can, I literally see kids just running around having
at
the
night,
best time.
12 p.m. at night.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it.
I love that. And knowing that if I have kids and my kids go out, like I'm not going to be stressed about where they are or if they're safe. So that safety aspect to Dubai, again, is something that is so underrated. You know, I've been looking and thinking about like, where else could I live and have this much freedom in terms of safety, right? That also provides the benefits in terms of taxes and so on. And, you know, there are very few places. So I really, really have enjoyed that aspect of Dubai. And I didn't know that existed. I didn't know that they had such incredible communities.
Yeah.
So that's something I really, really enjoy. And I think that's why, like, you know, came here, didn't know what to expect. And now it's like, when I go to other countries, I'm like, ooh, get me out of here. Get me out of here.
The ghetto.
The ghetto, honestly. So yeah.
Agreed. I love Dubai as well. I mean, those of you who watch my channel, you already know. I think it's such a good place to, and I think like you were saying, like a lot of it was to do with somewhere that was going to push you, and Dubai will push you because you will see levels of wealth that you're like, woo.
Yeah.
Let me get the work.
Exactly. You're like, you thought you built something, and then you come here, you know, and you're seeing that. And I think for me, it's not so much the feeling of wanting to keep up, right? Because some people come here and they feel like they have to keep up with the lifestyle. I don't have that experience. Like, I'm not going to invest financially in things that don't make sense for me just to have a look. But I do like the feeling of being inspired, you know, and also the feeling of saving, you know, like when you talk about the cost of living in Dubai, one thing I really like is that when I spend money, I know I'm going to get value from my money versus when I spend that same money in the UK or the US, you're not always guaranteed that value. Like Dubai, you're always going to get good service. You know, you're always going to get the highest level of luxury. And so that's something I really, really enjoy.
I love that. Okay, so the next topic I really wanted to move on to is like building wealth as a mother. So you became a mother and a wife in your 20s, like your mid-20s, late 20s-ish. You had an incredible wedding in Lake Como that was insane. You've had a baby and everything. And I did a reel recently where I was saying that like one of the things I'm not doing in my 20s is those two things. Right. I definitely do want to get married in my 20s, but I don't really want to have a big wedding. That's more like a personal characteristic thing. Like it's not really my thing. But then I also am not in a position to, I don't think I want to have kids in my 20s as well, because I'm kind of really focused on building assets and stuff. And when I said that, I'm obviously talking about myself, right? And some people were like, oh my God, like how could you say that? Like, what about what would this person think? And I'm like, no, I've seen people who have done it and who have done it, right? Your baby has had a first class flight before I've even had a first class flight, like, you know, and you still managed to have an amazing wedding, you know, you still managed to be a wife and stuff in your 20s. But like a lot of women who are ambitious don't want to do that because they feel like it might deter them from building that career that they want, building that wealth that they want. What is your opinion on that?
To be honest, I wouldn't be as excited as I was about the wedding, the baby, if I didn't have the right partner, right? I am someone that it's very few people who can, understand me, right? And let alone be partners with me, right? I obsess over my business. I have a clear understanding of where I'm going and what it takes to get there. And it requires a lot of work, right? Like right now, working in Readyhubb, building up a company and building a tech company, and the amount of investment and the time commitment that you need to make to scale, or even just, get to the beginning phases is a significant commitment. So for me, having a partner, having a husband, who is on the same wavelength in every shape is so important. And that's why I've been able to, make that investment in terms of, okay, like I'm actually ready to have a kid. Like that's actually something I'm looking forward to, even though I'm doing that alongside building my business. Having I'm Nigerian. So I don't think my parents would have, at first we said we were going to have, we're going to have a 50 people wedding. We're going to have that quickly changed. Okay. So, the intimate wedding we wanted to have quickly changed into a bigger wedding. But, being able to be in a space, both my husband and I being in a financial space to make that commitment and not feel that commitment, I think is important. Right. And then also being able to have a child is because I have a partner that is supportive, right? And understands that motherhood is not going to look the same for me as it might look like for someone else, right? And so we have a very, very clear understanding of what we want our life to be like, even though we are, I'm still in my 20s. I still want to, work as hard, and I'm always going to be that person that's working hard. But now I'm balancing motherhood. Now, I don't know if that's something I would recommend to other people. So I understand why you're choosing that path because it is difficult. Like my life overnight is 10 times more difficult. I always have a trade-off in terms of what I could be doing with my time, and as someone who's always been super selfish with their time, marriage and motherhood has completely shaken my world. I could pull the all-nighter. I can spend hours working, closed off. I can't do that anymore. Right. And so I'm a lot more purposeful now about how I am spending my time when I'm working. And I'm also very, I can be a bit more short with people, like get to the point, like what, like I don't have the time to waste anymore. So, I use my time very wisely, and then I build systems that allow me to still participate in my business and then still also have the time to spend as a mother, as a wife, and so on. So if you don't have those systems, it can be a huge struggle. And I'm thankful to have those systems. And then that's also in large part living in Dubai, right? Dubai has helped me build those systems where I can have help, right? Where I can, have the time to have access to certain standards and quality of living that I might not have elsewhere. Right. And so, if you can put yourself in a country that is going to be, that's going to help you reach that next step that you're trying to go in life, then do that.
I wanted to ask you, in what areas are you more frugal? And then in what areas do you spend a lot on?
Barely anything. I'm someone who, I'm not a huge spender. I like to save and I like to invest. So those are my two things. But when I do spend money, and I believe that you should spend money on the thing that's going to give you the highest level of excitement, right? And so even though I might not spend money on a lot of different things, the things I spend my money on, I deeply care about. One of them is I spend money to make my life easier, right? I don't like to cook, right? Can I hire a chef? And that's one thing I always said, I would downsize my life, right? And in terms of I would have a smaller house and do all these things if it meant that I could save more money to not do certain things, right? So that for me is where I enjoy spending money, is not having to do certain things. Can I hire someone to come clean my house maybe a few times a week? Can I outsource this? I don't want to do ironing. So I think those are the best ways to spend money. And certainly as you build wealth, spend money on things that take up time. And I think to myself, what is my price per hour, right? If I was to sit here and do this, what does that cost to me per hour? And then I think about that in relation to the tasks that I have to do. And I try to outsource as much as possible. Another thing I spend money on is travel. I will always spend money on travel. Like, and that was something my partner and I like, he didn't understand at first. Like, I'm not the designer bag girly. I just got my first designer bag this year, I almost bullied into getting that designer bag.
I remember you turned up to dinner one time and I think you called your bag food cheese.
Girl, honestly, like I'm not a designer bag girly. So getting that designer bag, I got that this year. I don't have like luxury cars and all those things. But when it comes to travel, I will spend on an experience, and not just travel, just experiences. I love experiences. So for me, being able to spend on a wedding and have a destination wedding that brought everyone together, that is like a core memory that I will just always, like every time I think about it, it makes me feel warm. So know the type of person you are, right? And if you're more experiences, then spend on that. And then build systems that make your life easier. I did not come on this world to suffer. So anything I can do to reduce that, definitely. And then you also mentioned like the British versus the American, mindset in terms of money. So I definitely, and even in my husband, because he's British, I can see that they're more like British people are more conservative. Like, and the great thing is, he's a business owner as well, but I can definitely see where in terms of taking risks, I'm someone who, if I lose everything today, and I've said to him, and I think that scares him as well, right? That I have this mindset that I'm like, I can lose everything today and I know where I would start off tomorrow, and I'm very comfortable in that. I don't think that mindset necessarily translates in terms of, and again, I'm making a generalization, but just off of my observation, I feel that British people are a little bit more conservative when it comes to that. I also see that in terms of like the business landscape, right? So when you talk about funding and access to capital, right? I feel that when I speak to British investors, for example, British investors are a little bit more conservative in terms of the bets that they're willing to make. Right? They make less investments and they give smaller check sizes. So if you are a British entrepreneur, it might be worth going across the pond and building a presence in the US. US investors know that like, hey, I can invest $10 million and I can lose that $10 million. And they're okay with that. And they're like, money comes and goes, and that's okay, right? And so they're willing to place these very risky big bets on companies. And that's why you see American companies and American startups are performing better, right? Over time is because they have that access to capital coming from those investors that are willing to take risks. So yeah, and then even just like in terms of how we spend as well, So I feel like, British people are definitely more conservative. They're not willing to take those bigger risks. And just in terms of entrepreneurship, that entrepreneurship mind, my dad always said like, I want you to go to school in the US. And that was because he wanted me to be in an environment that like, if I say like, I'm going to go to Mars next year, Americans will be like, okay, let's do it. How are we going to make it happen? How can I help you? Like my manager, how I talked about my manager being like, okay, go build your business. And yes, you can still work with us, right? And so people seeing that value and they're willing to give you a chance, right? And again, I haven't lived in the UK long enough to know how the extent of how this applies. But just from, being in the UK, working with UK employees, UK investors, and so on, I see that there's that, shift in mindset.
You're definitely not the first person to say that. Like I was literally saw a clip on TikTok from the founder of Monzo, and he said the exact same thing. Like the attitude towards entrepreneurship, going for bigger things is very, very different in the UK versus America, which is why I'm telling people in the UK to go, even if it's for 6 months, even if it's for a year, go to other parts of the world. Like you will see that people have a very different mindset towards so many things, especially if you want a life that is outside of the conventional. Leave the UK, even just for a bit, just leave. Like you have to beg them because otherwise they won't go. Just leave because it really will change your mindset. Okay, so we're going to move on to the wealth woe segment. So this is where some of my subscribers, they send in some dilemmas that they have, and then we just give our opinion on, what we think. And if you're watching this and you have a dilemma that you want to send in, just check the link in the description or the show notes and you can submit your dilemma. It has to be money/finance related anonymously. Okay, so this person says, there's this guy I really like, but he's not wealthy and I want a wealthy lifestyle. There's potential in the guy, but I don't know if it's worth it. What would you advise? Should I give him a chance?
That's interesting. For for me personally, when it comes to dating and relationships, I completely believe in finding your match. And I think that financial compatibility should be taken more seriously in the dating world. I think, when you give a pass early on in the relationship, you start to notice that you're giving more passes down the line. And so find people that are where you're at, unless this person has the ambition, the drive, and the roadmap to where they want to be. Then for me, I believe in going for it. But if you're not seeing those next steps, if you're not seeing something already in motion, then that's a red flag.
So when you say, so you're saying find your match.
Yeah.
I like that, because that would assume that maybe she has a certain level she's attained a certain level herself.
Right.
Whereas when I read this, I don't feel like this, because this person says, there's this guy I like, but he's not wealthy and I want a wealthy lifestyle. So it's giving me like, I'm looking for a man to take me out of the position that I am in. So that's how I'm kind of reading it. I'm just like, what do you feel about that? Because I see so much of that on TikTok, where it's kind of like people only like, they're looking for guys to like, honestly, like elevate their lifestyle, take them out of a certain position. I'm 100% agree with you in terms of like, I don't know why, like, so let's say, for example, you see a woman who says, I'm earning 6 figures, I want a man who also earns the same, and people will be in uproar. And I'm like, if someone wants someone and they're on that level and they say, I want someone on that level, I think that makes absolute sense. But then when women are looking for men to completely revolutionize where they currently are, what do you think about that?
Honestly, since I've become a mom, I think I'm stricter on myself as a woman. And I think that women owe it to themselves to be with someone that can provide that level of financial security, even if they are not completely able to provide that. Because the moment you're in that relationship and maybe, you move to marriage, there's a lot that is demanded of you as a woman in that relationship. And in order to have a nice life, you need money, right? In order to kind of give him the things that you would, give of yourself in a relationship, and have that comfortability, you need money. And so I understand now why why women are requiring that financial stability, even if they're not 100% where the man is, because there's more required of you, not necessarily financially, but there is more required of you down the line in that relationship. So, and I think also, when we talk about like meeting your match, it's relative, right? So it can be based on where you are at the, time moment in your life as well. So I'm not for people who have just wildly unrealistic expectations. You might be early 20s, for example, you're both in college, and you're expecting him to have 6 figures. Again, like you have to kind of look and see what is the trajectory of this person? What is the roadmap and where is that person? Now, if I'm dating you and you are in your 40s and you're talking about financial struggles or coulda, woulda, shoulda, run for the hills. So you have to look and see like, how old is this person? What have they accomplished so far? Because if you're dealing with someone who has never, accomplished anything, or they're people who always have big ideas and they're not executors, then you're going to be in for trouble. And an insecure man for me is one of the most dangerous type of people you can be in a relationship with. You will suffer. You will suffer if you're in a relationship with someone who's insecure or has that deep-seated feeling like they haven't made it and they haven't done the things that they wanted to do in life.
How would your opinion have differed if this was 2 years ago before you had your baby? Because I feel like I've seen a little bit of your opinions change from like pre-baby to post-baby. So how would it have differed, do you think?
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, before baby, I think I was definitely of the opinion of like, again, meet your match, but be realistic, right? So I was kind of like, I didn't understand why. And I was young, and I also have always been, in the past few years, just been well off on my own. Yeah. So I didn't think about it, right? I didn't think about what it takes to like have a family, what it takes to have kids. So I understand now why women are demanding more from men, because like men are demanding a lot from us, you know? And so, yeah, it's been different, but I'm definitely of the opinion right now that like, it is absolutely okay to expect to financial compatibility. And it's okay to want that person that you are with to provide some sort of lifestyle at the very least, so that you're not struggling and suffering.
I love that. I actually wasn't like, I don't know what I was expecting, but I don't know if I was expecting that, but that's good. So your opinion then, should she give him a chance? Are you on the no?
I don't think so. I think like if you're really like sending these, you're reaching out and you're asking, I think you kind of know in your heart already. Because if you have to start asking, if you have to start like, you know, writing the pros and cons list, the relationship is already a wrap. Okay. So just throw that in the bin, find someone who is your match. If you make a concession, if you make too many concessions early in the relationship, you will regret it down the line. And I think one of the reasons why, you know, my previous relationships didn't work is like, I was trying to fit people, especially when it comes to finances. You know, like finances is one of the biggest reasons relationships don't work.
Very true. Okay, so 3 closing out questions. What is the best investment you've ever made?
I think for me, the best investment I've made so far is betting on myself, right? You can have money and you can try to invest in real estate. You can try to invest in stocks. You can do all the things. Those are not going to translate into wealth in the short term, right? And so in your 20s, the best bet that you can make is investing 110% in yourself in terms of if you want to see a 10x, 20x, 100x return, right? And so that's what I did is I spent time building businesses, being okay if they fail, right? Ready to pick back up. I mean, in between all of this, you know, like I mentioned, building Readyhubb, building Luxe Tribes. In between all of that, I built businesses and started things that failed, right? So I built things that did not work out, and I'm very okay with, you know, with that. But for me, Readyhubb is the next big bet. You know, I've been working on that company now for the past 3 years. Readyhubb is something that I've literally put my life savings into, right? We haven't received external funding to date. I really want to wait until we're able to get the right investor match, right? And actually have investors who understand our long-term goal, right? Rather than just taking capital from a place of desperation. And so betting on things and betting on ideas that I'm passionate about, for me, is the biggest one. Villa Lori in Bali, like building the villa. I've already like recovered all the money that I spent in the short years that that property has been on the market, right? So I'm renting it out as a vacation rental and been able to already recoup on my investment. So everything I make on from now on is pure profit. So investing in Bali has actually given me amazing returns. I think I would invest again, definitely. Although I do want to start looking into other markets. So I'm really interested in Zanzibar as a potential real estate market. I'm seeing a lot of really cool opportunities come about. And then also just kind of looking at other property markets and seeing where I can get in early.
Love that. Okay. Biggest money mistake.
Biggest money mistake. Let me see. I don't spend money like that too, but let me see. So when I first started Luxe Tribes, just a lot of financial mistakes made on bad hiring, right? And people underestimate the cost of hiring poorly and not taking your time to make sure that the people that you are hiring are a good fit. And so I spent a lot of time just hiring people that ended up not doing anything, not helping me move the ball, right? And that cost a lot. And then also just in terms of like, again, running a travel company, you are responsible for all of the ups and downs, right? So if something goes bad, if there's an injury, if there's a discrepancy with a booking, you are responsible. And so taking time to have the proper protections for your business is something that I don't think I put a lot of time into doing when I first started. And that's something for me that has, costed me financially. So just protecting your business end to end, I think is super important. And that's definitely, some of the financial mistakes that I've made.
Thank you so much, Chidi, for coming. You've shared so much. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Chidi Ashley, and you can find me on TikTok, even though I don't be posting like that. I'm mostly a scroller, but find me on TikTok at Chidi Ashley. Find my business, Readyhubb. If you're in the US, we're building Readyhubb for beauty professionals and their clients. We want to make it easy for you to book appointments with confidence, to not have to stress out whenever you're booking beauty. And for beauty professionals, we want to make it easy for you to manage your business end to end with our software. So find us on readyhubb.com. And if you're looking for travel, find us at Luxe Tribes on Instagram and luxetribes.com.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.